The vampire king of London had not spoken a single word in 3 days. He stood frozen at his window, staring at nothing, while his sister wept and his dog howled and his entire coven whispered about the human woman who had destroyed him. They said she came as a cook and left as a ghost, taking his dead heart with her. They said he would never recover. They said the great Theron Ashworth would rather watch the world burn than live another day without her. What they did not know was that 6 months earlier, everything had been different. 6 months earlier, she arrived at the Vampire King's doorstep with nothing but a suitcase, her grandmother's handwritten recipes, and a desperate prayer that this job would save her from rock bottom. She had no idea that within 6 months, the most feared creature in all of Europe would kneel before her in front of his entire court and beg her never to leave him. But before that moment came, she would first have to survive his world, earn his trust, and break through 400 years of ice surrounding his heart. Dahlia Reyes stood in the middle of her tiny Brooklyn apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes and broken dreams. The eviction notice was crumpled at the bottom of the trash can, but its words still echoed in her mind. 30 days. She had been given 30 days to vacate the only home she had known for the past 5 years, and now those 30 days were gone. At 31 years old, Dahlia had imagined her life would look different. She had imagined a restaurant of her own, maybe a husband, maybe children running through a proper house with a backyard. Instead, she had empty cupboards, a maxed-out credit card, and a suitcase that held everything she owned. She walked to the kitchen counter and picked up the worn leather journal that had belonged to her grandmother. The pages were stained with oil and love, filled with recipes passed down through 3 generations of Reyes women. Her grandmother had cooked her way out of poverty in Puerto Rico. Her mother had cooked her way through grief after losing her husband. And now Dahlia would cook her way out of this disaster, even if it meant flying across an ocean to do it. The job listing had been strange, almost unbelievable. A private estate in London seeking a live-in chef. Room and board included. Salary more generous than anything Dahlia had ever seen. The interview had been conducted entirely through email, and the questions had been oddly specific. Could she work nights? Was she comfortable with unusual dietary requests? Did she have any family who would miss her? That last question should have been a warning. But Dahlia had no family left. No boyfriend. No close friends who would notice if she disappeared. So she had answered honestly, and within 48 hours, a first-class plane ticket had appeared in her inbox. She zipped her suitcase closed and took one final look around the empty apartment. The walls were bare. The fridge was unplugged. There was nothing left of her here. "All right, Grandma," she whispered to the silence. "Your recipes saved Mama when Daddy died. They kept me fed when I had nothing. Now I need them to save me one more time." She grabbed her bag and walked out the door without looking back. 6,000 miles away, the rain was falling over London like a funeral shroud. Theron Ashworth stood at the towering window of Ashworth Manor, watching the droplets race down the ancient glass. His reflection stared back at him, pale and timeless, his long white hair flowing past his shoulders like a river of moonlight. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, his posture that of a king who had long ago grown weary of his throne. 423 years. That was how long he had walked this earth. He had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, danced at the courts of kings, and buried more enemies than he could count. The vampire covens of Europe whispered his name with fear and reverence. The Ashworth bloodline was the oldest, the most powerful, and the most ruthless when provoked. And yet tonight, Theron felt nothing but exhaustion. Behind him, the fire crackled in the massive stone fireplace. The manor was quiet, too quiet. It had been this way since his parents had been murdered 2 centuries ago, since his older brother had been executed by vampire hunters, since his world had shrunk down to just himself and his younger sister, Serafina. Family. That was what Theron valued above all else. He had slaughtered entire covens for threatening his bloodline. He had waited 75 years to take revenge on the descendants of those who had wronged him. He never forgot. He never forgave. And he never let go of those he loved, even when they begged him to. A soft clicking of nails on marble announced the arrival of his most trusted companion. Sovereign, his massive black German shepherd, padded across the room and pressed his warm body against Theron's leg. The dog was no ordinary pet. He had been with Theron for 12 years now, ever since Theron had found him as a wounded pup in the streets of Munich, surrounded by men who had been using him for fighting. Those men had not survived the night. Sovereign had not left Theron's side since. Theron reached down and scratched behind the dog's ears, his cold features softening just slightly. "The new chef arrives tonight," he said quietly. "Another human stumbling into our world. The last one lasted 3 weeks before she discovered the blood stores in the cellar and ran screaming into the night." Sovereign tilted his head, his intelligent dark eyes fixed on his master. Theron allowed himself a small, humorless smile. "You think this one will be different? You are an optimist, old friend. Humans are fragile. They break, they run, they disappoint. It is their nature." He turned back to the window, watching the headlights of a car slowly making its way up the long driveway. "Still," he murmured, something flickering in his ancient eyes, "I suppose we shall see." Downstairs, the doorbell echoed through the manor like a death knell. Theron did not move. He never greeted anyone at the door. He was a king, and kings did not scramble for visitors. But something made him pause tonight. Something made him listen more carefully than usual to the sound of his butler opening the door, to the soft voice of a woman saying her name. Dahlia Reyes. He rolled the name across his tongue silently. It meant nothing to him. She was just another servant, another temporary presence in his eternal existence. But Sovereign had risen to his feet, ears perked forward, tail wagging slowly. And in 12 years, Theron had never seen his dog react to a stranger with anything other than suspicion. "Interesting," Theron whispered. And for the first time in decades, curiosity stirred in his chest. If you are already hooked on the story, do not you dare scroll away without subscribing. You are about to witness the most intense, heart-pounding vampire romance you have ever experienced, and I promise you, Theron's grand entrance is coming. You do not want to miss what happens when he finally comes face to face with Dahlia for the first time. Join the fastest growing vampire love stories community right now. Just tap that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you are watching from tonight. I would love to know which corner of the world is about to fall in love with Theron Ashworth and his Dahlia. Now let me ask you something before we continue. Sovereign is already acting different around Dahlia. Do you think this dog knows something about her that even Theron does not understand yet? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Dahlia stood in the grand foyer of Ashworth Manor, her wet suitcase dripping onto marble floors that probably cost more than every apartment she had ever rented combined. The butler who had opened the door was an elderly man with kind eyes and a formal demeanor. He had introduced himself as Mr. Hartwell and taken her coat with the sort of practiced grace that made her feel like she had stepped into a period drama. But it was the manor itself that stole her breath. The ceiling soared 3 stories above her head, painted with scenes of angels and demons locked in eternal battle. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, casting prismatic light across walls lined with portraits of pale, beautiful people spanning centuries of fashion. A grand staircase curved upward like the spine of some sleeping beast, its banister carved from dark wood that gleamed with age and care. Dahlia clutched her grandmother's recipe journal to her chest, suddenly feeling very small and very ordinary. "The master will receive you shortly," Mr. Hartwell said, his voice echoing in the vast space. "He prefers to conduct interviews personally for all household staff." "I thought I was already hired," Dahlia said, a thread of anxiety weaving through her voice. "The email said the position was mine." Mr. Hartwell's expression flickered with something that might have been sympathy. "The master likes to form his own impressions. I am sure you will do fine, Miss Reyes. Just remember to speak clearly, do not avert your eyes, and whatever you do, do not show fear." Before Dahlia could ask why fear would even be relevant in a job interview, the butler disappeared through a side door, leaving her alone in the foyer. The silence was immense. It pressed against her ears like deep water. Dahlia could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the rain lashing against the windows, could hear the distant ticking of a clock somewhere in the depths of the manor. And then she heard something else. The soft clicking of nails on marble. She turned and found herself face to face with the largest German shepherd she had ever seen. The dog was pure black, his coat gleaming like polished obsidian, his eyes dark and intelligent and fixed directly on her face. He stood perfectly still at the base of the grand staircase, watching her with an intensity that felt almost human. Dahlia's heart stuttered, but not with fear. She had always loved dogs. Growing up in Brooklyn, she had never been allowed to have one, but she had fed every stray in her neighborhood, had memorized their names and their favorite spots and their particular likes and dislikes. Slowly, she crouched down, making herself smaller, less threatening. "Hey there, handsome," she murmured softly. "You must be the welcoming committee. I am Dahlia. I am going to be cooking here. You think you might like me?" The dog tilted his head. Then, to her amazement, he walked forward, closed the distance between them, and pressed his massive head directly into her palm. Dahlia laughed, a genuine sound of delight that echoed through the cold foyer like unexpected sunshine. She scratched behind his ears, ran her fingers through his thick fur, and felt some of her anxiety melt away. "You are beautiful," she whispered. "Yes, you are. You are absolutely beautiful. I bet nobody tells you that enough. I bet everyone is too scared of you to see how sweet you are." The dog's tail wagged slowly. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing with contentment. And that was the moment Theron Ashworth made his entrance. Later, Dahlia would try to describe what happened next. She would struggle to find words for it, would fail to capture the way the very air in the room seemed to shift and thicken, the way the temperature dropped several degrees, the way every candle in every chandelier flickered simultaneously as if bowing to an approaching king. She heard him before she saw him. Footsteps on the staircase. Slow. Deliberate. Each one landing with the weight of absolute authority. Dahlia rose to her feet and turned toward the sound, her heart suddenly pounding against her ribs. And then he appeared. Theron Ashworth descended the grand staircase like a god descending from Olympus, like a nightmare stepping out of shadow and into form. His long white hair flowed behind him, catching the chandelier light and glowing like liquid silver. His face was carved from pale marble, all sharp cheekbones and a jawline that could cut glass, his lips curved in the faintest suggestion of a smile that held no warmth whatsoever. He wore a black suit that fit him like a second skin, a blood-red pocket square the only spot of color against the darkness. But it was his eyes that pinned Dahlia in place. They were pale gray, almost colorless, ancient and knowing and terrifying. They looked at her and she felt seen in a way she had never experienced, as if he could read every secret she had ever kept, every fear she had ever buried, every dream she had ever abandoned. He reached the bottom of the staircase and stopped. The silence stretched between them like a held breath. Then he spoke. "Sovereign does not like strangers." His voice was low and rich, carrying a faint British accent layered over something older, something that hinted at centuries of existence. There was amusement in it, and danger, and something else Dahlia could not identify. She glanced down at the dog, who was still pressed against her leg, then back up at the man who could only be her new employer. "Maybe he has good taste in strangers," she heard herself say. The words were out before she could stop them. Dahlia felt her face flush with horror. This was a job interview. This man was clearly wealthy beyond imagination and powerful in ways she did not yet understand. And she had just been sarcastic with him. But instead of anger, something flickered in those pale gray eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Or interest. Theron took a step closer. Then another. He moved like a predator, all fluid grace and coiled power. Dahlia's instinct screamed at her to step back, to run, to put distance between herself and this creature who looked like a man but felt like something far more dangerous. She held her ground. Theron stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell him. He smelled like old books and sandalwood and something metallic underneath, something that made her pulse jump in a way that was not entirely fear. "Miss Reyes," he said, her name rolling off his tongue like a taste he was savoring. "You flew across an ocean to cook for a stranger. You answered questions about your isolation and your lack of family ties. You accepted a position in a manor you had never seen, for a man you had never met." He tilted his head, studying her face with unnerving intensity. "Either you are running from something, or you are spectacularly foolish. Which is it?" Dahlia swallowed hard. The truth sat on her tongue like a stone. "Both," she admitted. "I am running from a life that was not working. And I am probably foolish for thinking a fresh start could fix anything. But I am also a damn good cook, Mr. Ashworth. I learned from my grandmother, who could make a meal out of nothing and turn it into something that made people weep with joy. I do not know what you are looking for in a chef, but I can promise you this. Whatever I make for you, you will remember for the rest of your life. The words hung in the air between them. Theron stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth curved upward into a smile that transformed his entire face. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a wolf who had just spotted something interesting in the woods. Bold, he murmured. I do appreciate boldness. It is so rare these days. Everyone is so concerned with being polite, with bowing and scraping and telling me what they think I want to hear. He leaned in, just slightly, and Dahlia caught her breath. Tell me, Miss Reyes. Do you know what I am? The question was soft, almost gentle, but it carried weight like a loaded gun. Dahlia's mind raced. The pale skin. The ancient eyes. The way he moved. The strange questions about night hours and unusual dietary requirements. The blood-red pocket square. The feeling of danger that radiated from him like heat from a flame. She should lie. She should play dumb. She should pretend she had no idea what he was implying. Instead, she met his eyes and spoke the truth. I think you are something I have only read about in stories. And I think you expected me to run when I figured it out. Theron's smile widened. For a moment, Dahlia saw a flash of something sharp behind his lips. Fangs. Actual fangs. And yet here you stand, he said softly. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. He turned away from her, walking toward the fireplace with Sovereign padding faithfully at his heels. But the dog paused, looked back at Dahlia, then deliberately returned to her side and sat down at her feet. Theron noticed. He stopped. Turned. Looked at his dog, then at the woman his dog had chosen. Something shifted in his expression. Something Dahlia could not read. It appears Sovereign has made his decision, Theron said quietly. And in 400 years, I have learned never to argue with his judgment. He met her eyes across the room. Welcome to Ashworth Manor, Miss Reyes. Your trial period begins tonight. Do try not to disappoint me. He vanished through a doorway, leaving Dahlia alone with the fire and the dog and the thundering of her own heart. She looked down at Sovereign, who gazed back up at her with knowing eyes. What have I gotten myself into? She whispered. Sovereign simply wagged his tail. The first week at Ashworth Manor passed in a blur of marble hallways, impossible expectations, and sleepless nights. Dahlia threw herself into her work with a desperation that bordered on obsession. She woke before sunset, when the manor was still and silent, and spent hours in the massive kitchen preparing meals she was not entirely sure anyone would eat. The kitchen itself was a dream, stocked with equipment that would have made any professional chef weep with envy. A La Cornue range imported from France. Copper pots that gleamed like new pennies. A walk-in refrigerator filled with ingredients she had only ever read about in culinary magazines. But there was also the other refrigerator. The one in the basement. The one Mr. Hartwell had shown her on her first night with a gentle warning never to open it unless specifically instructed. She did not need to open it to know what was inside. Dahlia cooked anyway. She made her grandmother's sofrito, filling the kitchen with the scent of garlic and peppers and memories of home. She prepared delicate French dishes she had learned during her brief stint at a culinary school she could not afford to finish. She baked bread from scratch, the yeasty aroma drifting through the manor like a warm embrace. And every night, she set the table in the grand dining room and waited. Sometimes Theron appeared. He would glide into the room like a shadow given form, settle into his chair at the head of the table, and watch her serve with those unreadable pale eyes. He never ate much. A few bites here and there, more for show than sustenance. But he always commented on her work, his observations sharp and precise. The risotto is adequate. The saffron is slightly overpowering. This lamb is exceptional. You have a gift for knowing when meat is finished. Your grandmother's recipe, I presume? It tastes like love and desperation. An interesting combination. Dahlia never knew how to respond to him. He unsettled her in ways she could not articulate. Every time he entered a room, her pulse quickened. Every time his eyes met hers, she felt exposed, as if he could see straight through her carefully constructed walls to the lonely, frightened woman beneath. She told herself it was fear. He was a vampire, after all. A predator. It was natural to feel unsettled in his presence. But fear did not explain why she found herself listening for his footsteps. Fear did not explain why her heart sank on the nights he did not appear for dinner. Fear did not explain the strange warmth that spread through her chest when he smiled at something she said. She was being ridiculous. He was her employer. He was immortal. He was dangerous. And she was just the cook. Theron, for his part, was engaged in his own battle of resistance. He stood in his study on the seventh night, a glass of something dark and thick in his hand, staring at the fire without seeing it. Sovereign lay at his feet, occasionally lifting his head to gaze at his master with what Theron could only describe as disappointment. "Do not look at me like that," Theron muttered. "She is a servant. A human. She will grow old and die in the blink of an eye while I remain unchanged. There is no point in forming attachments." Sovereign huffed and laid his head back down. "I have lived 4 centuries, Theron continued, as if arguing with himself. "I have watched countless humans come and go. They are mayflies. Beautiful, perhaps, in their brief flickering existence, but ultimately insignificant in the grand sweep of time." Even as he spoke the words, he knew they were lies. There was something about Dahlia Reyes that he could not dismiss. It was not just her cooking, though that was remarkable. It was not just her courage, though that was rare. It was the way she looked at him without flinching. The way she spoke to him as if he were a man rather than a monster. The way she had crouched down to pet his dog with such genuine tenderness that something ancient and frozen inside him had cracked, just slightly. He had watched her through the manor's many windows over the past week. He had observed her talking to the kitchen staff, learning their names and their stories and their favorite foods. He had seen her stay up late to help the elderly housekeeper carry linens. He had noticed the way she always set aside a portion of whatever she cooked for Sovereign, sneaking the dog treats when she thought no one was watching. She was kind. Genuinely, infuriatingly kind. And kindness was something Theron had not encountered in a very long time. He drained his glass and set it down with more force than necessary. "It means nothing," he said firmly. "She is merely competent at her job. That is all." The door to his study opened without a knock, and Theron did not need to turn to know who had entered. "Brother," a musical voice called out. "Are you brooding again? How delightfully predictable." Seraphina Ashworth swept into the room like a summer storm, all golden hair and mischievous eyes and the kind of beauty that had driven men to madness for 3 centuries. She was wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's cars, and her smile held the sharpness of a blade hidden in silk. "I am not brooding," Theron said flatly. "I am contemplating. You are staring at a fire and talking to your dog. That is the very definition of brooding." Seraphina draped herself across the leather sofa and examined her perfectly manicured nails. "I met your new chef today. The human. Dahlia, is it?" Theron's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. And she is interesting. Not the usual terrified rabbit you tend to hire. She actually looked me in the eye when I spoke to her. Even offered to make me something called." Seraphina waved her hand vaguely. "Mofongo? Some Puerto Rican dish." She said it was comfort food. How generous of her. Indeed. Seraphina's eyes gleamed with knowing amusement. "She also asked about you. Wanted to know your favorite foods, your preferences, your schedule. Very thorough for a simple cook." Theron turned to face his sister, his expression carefully blank. "She is trying to do her job well. There is nothing unusual about that." "Of course not." Seraphina smiled like a cat with a secret. And there is nothing unusual about the way you have been lurking near the kitchen every night. Or the way you actually ate food for the first time in decades. Or the way Sovereign follows her around like a lovesick puppy. At the mention of his name, Sovereign lifted his head and wagged his tail. I do not lurk, Theron said coldly. You absolutely lurk. You are the king of lurking. You have been lurking since the 16th century. Serafina rose from the sofa and crossed to her brother, her expression softening just slightly. Theron. I am not mocking you. Well, I am, but not entirely. It has been a very long time since I have seen you show interest in anything beyond vengeance and family politics. If this human has caught your attention, perhaps that is not a terrible thing. Theron's face hardened. The last time I showed interest in a human, she betrayed me to the Venetian coven and nearly got you killed. Have you forgotten that, sister? Serafina's smile faded. That was 200 years ago. And I remember it as if it were yesterday. I remember the way she smiled at me while her allies set fire to her home. I remember carrying your unconscious body through the flames. I remember hunting down every single person responsible and making them pay for their crimes, not just them, but their children and their grandchildren. Theron's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of centuries of rage. I am not a man who forgets, Serafina. I am not a man who trusts. And I am certainly not a man who allows himself to feel anything for fragile creatures who will inevitably disappoint me. Serafina was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched her brother's arm. Not every human is Katerina, she said gently. Not everyone will betray you. Perhaps not. But I will not take that risk again. Theron pulled away from her touch. The cook is here to cook. Nothing more. And when she inevitably runs screaming from this manor like all the others, I will find a replacement and continue on as I always have. Alone. He strode out of the study, Sovereign hesitating for just a moment before following. Serafina watched him go, then shook her head slowly. Oh, brother, she murmured to the empty room. You are in so much more trouble than you realize. Downstairs, Dahlia was in the kitchen, aggressively kneading bread dough and trying very hard not to think about her employer. She had met his sister today. Serafina had been beautiful and intimidating and surprisingly friendly, once Dahlia had gotten past the initial shock of those two sharp canines. The conversation had been pleasant, surface level, but Dahlia had caught the way Serafina studied her, as if searching for something hidden. These vampires and their secrets. Dahlia was beginning to feel like she had stumbled into a world with rules she did not understand. Sovereign padded into the kitchen, his nails clicking on the tile floor. He went straight to Dahlia and pressed his nose against her flour-covered hand. Hey, handsome, she murmured, pausing her kneading to scratch his ears. Did you escape from your master again? Sovereign's tail wagged. He had been doing this every day, seeking her out whenever Theron was not watching. Dahlia had started keeping special treats for him, little pieces of cooked chicken hidden in her apron pocket. You know what, Sovereign? Your master confuses me. She resumed kneading, her movements slower now, more thoughtful. He looks at me like I am a puzzle he is trying to solve. He says these things that are almost mean but not quite. And sometimes, just sometimes, I catch him watching me with this expression that makes me feel like... She trailed off, shaking her head. Like what? A voice asked from the doorway. Dahlia jumped so hard she nearly knocked the bread dough onto the floor. Theron stood in the kitchen entrance, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed, his white hair gleaming in the overhead lights. He was smiling that wolf smile again, all teeth and danger. How long have you been standing there? Dahlia demanded, her heart racing. Long enough to know you find me confusing. He pushed off from the doorframe and walked toward her, each step deliberate. Tell me, Miss Reyes. What exactly about me confuses you? Is it the immortality? The drinking of blood? The centuries of accumulated power and wealth? It is the mixed signals, Dahlia heard herself say. Theron stopped. His smile faltered. Mixed signals, he repeated slowly. Dahlia knew she should stop talking. She knew she should apologize, change the subject, remember her place. But something about this man, this vampire, made her want to push back. Made her want to see what would happen if she refused to be afraid. "You act like you do not want me here," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "Like I am an inconvenience you are tolerating until I leave. But then you show up for dinner every night. You comment on my cooking like it matters to you. Your dog follows me everywhere, and I know that means something because Mr. Hartwell told me Sovereign does not like anyone except you." She took a breath. "So either you want me here, or you do not. But this in-between is exhausting." The kitchen was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Theron stared at her for a long, unreadable moment. Then, slowly, he laughed. It was not the cold, humorless laugh she had heard before. This was genuine, surprised, as if she had caught him off guard in a way no one had managed in centuries. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Miss Reyes," he said, still chuckling. "I genuinely cannot decide which." "Both," she reminded him. "We established that on my first night." "So we did." He moved closer, close enough that she could see the ancient depths of his gray eyes. "Very well. Since you demand clarity, I shall provide it. I did not want you here. I did not want anyone here. I have spent the last 200 years building walls around myself that no human could penetrate. And then you arrived with your grandmother's recipes and your stubborn courage and your complete refusal to treat me like the monster I am." He reached out and brushed a smudge of flour from her cheek. His fingers were cold, but the touch was gentle. "You confuse me too, Dahlia Reyes," he said softly. "And I do not like being confused." Before she could respond, he turned and walked out of the kitchen, Sovereign reluctantly trailing behind him. Dahlia stood frozen, her cheek still tingling where he had touched her. "What just happened?" she whispered to the empty room. The bread dough offered no answers. 3 weeks into her employment, Dahlia had settled into a rhythm she almost understood. She cooked. She cleaned. She avoided asking too many questions about the guests who occasionally visited the manor after midnight, guests with the same pale skin and sharp smiles as her employer. She pretended not to notice when shipments arrived at odd hours, when screams occasionally echoed from the basement, when Theron disappeared for nights at a time and returned with blood on his collar and a darkness in his eyes that made her want to reach out and hold him. That last impulse frightened her more than anything else. She was in the garden on a rare sunny afternoon, taking advantage of the light to tend the herbs Mr. Hartwell had planted years ago. Sovereign lay beside her, his massive body stretched across the grass, basking in the warmth like a contented shadow. Dahlia had discovered that the dog loved the sun almost as much as she did, perhaps because his master could never join him in it. "You know what I miss about Brooklyn?" she said to Sovereign, pulling weeds from around the rosemary. "The noise. The chaos. The way you could walk 3 blocks and find food from 17 different countries." She smiled at the memory. "There was this bodega on my corner, Manny's Place, that made the best bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches in all 5 boroughs. I used to get one every Sunday morning after my shift at the restaurant. Manny always threw in extra hot sauce because he said I looked like I needed the fire." Sovereign lifted his head and whined softly. I know. I am being nostalgic. It is pathetic." She scratched behind his ears. "But sometimes I wonder what I am doing here, you know? Playing house with vampires. Falling into routines that feel almost normal but definitely are not. Talking to a dog like he understands me." Sovereign barked once, as if offended. "Okay, fine. You do understand me. You are the smartest boy in all of London." She pressed a kiss to the top of his head. "Do not tell your master I said that. His ego is big enough already." The afternoon light was beginning to fade when Mr. Hartwell appeared in the garden, his usually calm face tight with concern. "Miss Reyes, you must come inside immediately," he said, his voice carrying an urgency she had never heard before. "We are locking down the manor." Dahlia rose to her feet, brushing dirt from her knees. "Locking down? What does that mean?" "It means there is a threat approaching, and the master has ordered all humans to shelter in the secure wing. Mr. Hartwell was already ushering her toward the house. "Please, Miss Reyes." "There is no time to explain." She allowed herself to be led inside, Sovereign trotting anxiously at her heels. The manor was transformed. Staff members she had never seen before were sealing windows with heavy iron shutters. Candles were being extinguished, replaced by the dim glow of emergency lighting. Somewhere in the depths of the house, she could hear Serafina's voice issuing rapid commands in a language Dahlia did not recognize. "What is happening?" Dahlia demanded as Mr. Hartwell led her down a corridor she had never explored. "Is someone coming? Is someone trying to hurt the family?" "The Valancourt Coven," Mr. Hartwell said grimly. "They have been enemies of the Ashworths for centuries. We received word an hour ago that they are sending an envoy. But this is no diplomatic visit. They mean to intimidate, to probe for weaknesses." He stopped at a heavy oak door and pressed his palm against a hidden panel. The door swung open to reveal a small but comfortable room. "You will stay here until the master says otherwise. Sovereign will remain with you." "Wait," Dahlia said, panic rising in her chest. "What about Theron? What about Serafina? Are they safe?" Mr. Hartwell looked at her for a long moment, something flickering in his elderly eyes. "The master has survived 400 years of enemies, Miss Reyes. The Valancourts are dangerous, but they are not suicidal. They would not dare to truly attack him in his own home." He paused. "But they might try to use anyone he cares about as leverage. Which is why you must stay hidden." Before Dahlia could process what he meant by anyone he cares about, the butler closed the door, and she heard the heavy click of locks engaging. She was trapped. The next 4 hours were the longest of Dahlia's life. She paced the small room, Sovereign watching her with anxious eyes. She tried the door repeatedly, knowing it was useless. She pressed her ear against the wood, straining to hear anything from the world outside. Voices. She could make out voices, distant and muffled. Theron's low, dangerous tone. Another voice, oily and mocking, that made her skin crawl even through the barrier. And occasionally, the sound of something breaking, followed by laughter that held no warmth. Dahlia had never felt so helpless. "He is going to be fine," she whispered to Sovereign, more for her own benefit than the dog's. "He is the most powerful vampire in London. He has enemies who fear him. He has survived centuries. He does not need me worrying about him like some foolish human." Sovereign whined and pressed his body against her legs. "I know," she said softly. "I am worried too." Around midnight, she heard footsteps approaching the door. Heavy. Deliberate. But wrong somehow, the rhythm unfamiliar. Sovereign's entire body went rigid. A low growl rumbled from his chest, his lips pulling back to reveal teeth that suddenly looked much larger and more dangerous than Dahlia had ever noticed. "Sovereign?" she whispered. The dog positioned himself between her and the door, every muscle coiled and ready. The locks clicked. The door swung open. A stranger stood in the doorway. He was tall and gaunt, with slicked-back dark hair and eyes that gleamed red in the dim light. His smile revealed fangs that dripped with something Dahlia did not want to identify. Well, the stranger said, his voice carrying a thick French accent. "The Ashworth's pet human." I wondered if the rumors were true. They say the great Theron has developed a fondness for his little cook. He took a step into the room. Let us see how fond he truly is. Sovereign launched himself at the intruder with a ferocity that stole Dahlia's breath. But the vampire was faster. He caught the dog by the throat and flung him against the wall with a sickening crack. Sovereign yelped and crumpled to the floor, struggling to rise. "No!" Dahlia screamed, rushing toward her fallen friend. The vampire caught her arm, his grip cold and crushing. He pulled her close, his rotten breath washing over her face. "Such loyalty," he murmured. "Such fire. I can see why he keeps you. Perhaps when I am finished with the Ashworth line, I will keep you for myself." Dahlia did the only thing she could think of. She drove her knee upward with every ounce of strength she possessed. The vampire howled with surprise and pain, his grip loosening just enough for her to tear herself free. She stumbled backward, her arm throbbing, her heart pounding, knowing she had only bought herself seconds. The vampire's face twisted with rage. He lunged toward her. And then the world exploded. The wall behind the vampire simply ceased to exist. Stone and plaster and ancient wood detonated inward as if struck by a bomb, and through the destruction stepped Theron Ashworth. Dahlia had thought she understood what he was. She had seen his fangs, his inhuman speed, his ancient eyes. But nothing had prepared her for this. Theron was wrath incarnate. His white hair whipped around him like a living thing, his eyes blazing with a fury so intense they seemed to glow. His suit was torn, his hands stained with something dark, and when he smiled, it was the smile of death itself, patient and inevitable and utterly without mercy. "Renaud," he said, and his voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "I see you found my kitchen." The French vampire, Renaud, stumbled backward, all arrogance draining from his face. "Theron, You were merely touching what belongs to me." Theron moved forward, each step shaking the ground beneath him. "You were merely threatening a woman under my protection. You were merely hurting my dog." His smile widened. "Tell me, Renaud. Do you remember what I did to the last person who threatened someone I cared about?" Renaud was trembling now. "That was different. That was war. The Valancourt Coven will." "The Valancourt Coven sent you as a message," Theron interrupted. "So I will send you back as one." He reached out with impossible speed and seized Renaud by the throat, lifting him off the ground as if he weighed nothing. "Every bone in your body, Renaud. I am going to break every single one. And then I am going to send you home to your masters in a very small box. And they will know, as they have always known, that the Ashworths do not forgive. We do not forget. And we always repay our debts." What happened next was brutal and swift, and Dahlia turned away, burying her face in Sovereign's fur as the dog limped to her side. She heard sounds she never wanted to hear again. She heard Renaud begging, screaming, falling silent. And then she heard footsteps approaching, softer now, and a cold hand gentle on her shoulder. "Dahlia." She looked up. Theron knelt before her, his face still splattered with evidence of his violence, but his eyes soft with concern. He reached out and touched her bruised arm with impossible gentleness. "Did he hurt you?" he asked quietly. "I am fine," she whispered. "Sovereign," he threw Sovereign against the wall. Theron's gaze moved to the dog, who was panting heavily but wagging his tail. "He will heal. We will have the veterinarian from Harley Street here within the hour. The best in London." He returned his attention to Dahlia, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "I should have kept you closer. I thought you would be safe in the secure room. I did not anticipate that Renaud would find a way past the locks." "How did you know?" Dahlia asked. "How did you know to come?" Theron's jaw tightened. "Sovereign and I share a bond. When he attacked Renaud, I felt his rage. His fear." He paused. "His desperation to protect you." Dahlia looked at the dog, then back at the vampire who had just torn another creature apart to save her. "You came through a wall," she said numbly. "It was faster than the door." Despite everything, despite the horror and the fear and the violence, Dahlia felt a laugh bubble up in her chest. "You are insane," she said. "I am thorough," Theron corrected. "There is a difference." He rose to his feet and offered her his hand. "Come. The manor is secure, but you will stay in the family wing tonight. Close to me. Close to Serafina." His eyes held hers. "I will not let you out of my sight again." Dahlia took his hand. It was cold and stained and belonged to a monster. But when his fingers closed around hers, she felt safer than she had in her entire life. That night, she slept in a room adjacent to Theron's chambers, Sovereign curled on the bed beside her despite the veterinarian's protests that he should rest. She woke once to find Theron standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the moonlight, watching over her like a guardian from the old stories. She should have been afraid. She was not. The attack changed everything. Dahlia woke the next morning to find Theron had assigned her a personal guard, a stern vampire named Matthias who followed her everywhere with the enthusiasm of a prison warden. She woke to find Sovereign refusing to leave her side despite the veterinarian's orders that he rest. She woke to find herself no longer a cook, but something else entirely. Something she did not have a name for yet. She was standing in the library 3 days later, running her fingers along the spines of books that were older than her entire country, when Serafina found her. "He's being ridiculous, is he not?" the vampire woman said, sweeping into the room with her usual dramatic flair. She gestured toward Matthias, who stood by the door like a statue. A personal guard. As if the entire manor is not already locked down tighter than the Tower of London. "He is being cautious," Dahlia said carefully. After what happened with Renaud, my brother sent the Valancourt Coven a message they will not forget for the next century. Serafina settled into a velvet chair, studying Dahlia with those two knowing eyes. 12 vampires. He destroyed 12 of their strongest fighters in a single night. The streets of Shoreditch are still cleaning up the evidence. She smiled. It was quite the spectacle. Very Theron. Very dramatic. Very him making a point that cannot be misunderstood. Dahlia felt something cold settle in her stomach. 12? Oh, did he not tell you? Serafina's smile widened. No, of course he did not. He never brags about his violence, not to humans he is trying to impress. But yes, 12. They came to our doorstep thinking they could intimidate us. They left in pieces, those who left at all. Dahlia sat down slowly, her legs suddenly unsteady. She thought of Theron as she had seen him that night. The rage. The absolute certainty. The way he had torn through a wall to reach her. He did that because of me, she said quietly. He did that because they threatened what belongs to him, Serafina corrected. There is a difference, though perhaps not one you want to hear. She leaned forward, her expression growing more serious. Dahlia. I like you. Genuinely. You have brought something into this house that has been missing for a very long time. Light, perhaps. Warmth. Something that makes my brother remember he is more than just vengeance and old wounds. She paused. But you need to understand what you are getting into. Theron does not care about things lightly. And when he does care, he becomes obsessive. Possessive. Dangerous to anyone who might take that thing away from him. I am not a thing, Dahlia said, a thread of anger weaving through her voice. No, you are not. But to him, you are becoming something far more complicated. And the last time that happened, it nearly destroyed our entire family. The words hung in the air like smoke. Dahlia wanted to ask. She knew she should not. She knew it was none of her business, that she was just the cook, just the human, just the temporary presence in an immortal world. But she asked anyway. Who was she? The woman who betrayed him? Serafina was quiet for a long moment. Then she rose and walked to the window, gazing out at the London skyline. Her name was Katerina, she said softly. And she was beautiful and clever, and she made my brother believe, just for a moment, that he could have something normal. Something resembling love. She turned back to Dahlia. This was Venice, 1824. We had been living there for 30 years, ruling the local covens, keeping the peace. Theron met Katerina at a masquerade ball. She was the daughter of a merchant, educated, charming. She knew what he was within a week and did not run. She told him she had always believed in monsters, had always wanted to meet one. Serafina's voice grew harder. He courted her for 2 years. Gave her everything. Jewels, art, protection, devotion. He was planning to turn her, to make her immortal, to bind her to our family forever. And then one night, the Venetian coven attacked our home. They knew exactly where to strike, exactly when we would be vulnerable, exactly which wards to break. She met Dahlia's eyes. Katerina had given them everything. She had been working with them from the beginning. It was all a game to her, a way to destroy the great Theron Ashworth from the inside. Dahlia's hand flew to her mouth. Oh God. I was 23 years old, in vampire years. Still young. Still learning. The fire they set would have killed me if Theron had not carried me out through the flames. He was burned, badly. It took him months to heal fully. Serafina's voice was barely above a whisper now. He made them all pay. Caterina, the Venetian coven, everyone involved. But he did not just kill them. He waited. He tracked down Caterina's younger sister and ruined her marriage. He found her nephew 70 years later and destroyed his business empire. He has made it his mission to ensure that every branch of her family tree suffers, generation after generation, until the bloodline ends or the world does. Dahlia felt sick. That is horrible. That is Theron, Serafina said simply. He loves completely, and he destroys completely. There is no middle ground with him. No forgiveness. No moving on. She crossed back to Dahlia, her expression almost pitying. So when I see the way he looks at you, when I see him breaking his own rules to keep you close, when I see him committing mass murder because someone dared to bruise your arm, I worry. Because if you hurt him, Dahlia Reyes, even accidentally, he will make you pay in ways you cannot imagine. And if you do not hurt him, if you actually care for him, you will have to accept that his love comes with blood and violence and obsession. Dahlia stood on shaking legs. I am just his cook. Keep telling yourself that, Serafina said softly. But we both know it stopped being true the moment Sovereign chose you. She left the library, leaving Dahlia alone with Matthias and 1,000 racing thoughts. That evening, Dahlia cooked with a fury she had not felt since Brooklyn. She made arroz con gandules, her grandmother's signature dish, the one that required patience and precision and love. She made tostines, frying the plantains until they were perfectly crispy. She made pernil, slow-roasted pork shoulder that filled the kitchen with the scent of garlic and oregano and memories of every family gathering she had ever attended. She cooked because it was the only thing that made sense. The only thing she could control. Sovereign lay in his usual spot by the stove, watching her with concerned eyes. He had recovered from the attack, but he stayed even closer to her now, as if afraid she might disappear. Your master is a complicated man, Dahlia said to the dog as she stirred the rice. Your master has 400 years of baggage and a list of enemies longer than my entire cookbook. Your master probably should not be my problem. Sovereign tilted his head. But he is he not? Dahlia continued quietly. He is my problem because I think about him constantly. Because my heart jumps every time I hear his footsteps. Because when he came through that wall to save me, I did not see a monster. I saw someone who would burn the world down to keep me safe. An accurate assessment. Dahlia spun around to find Theron standing in the kitchen doorway. She had no idea how long he had been there. His white hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp angles of his face, and he was dressed more casually than she had ever seen him, in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal pale, muscular forearms. He looked almost human. Almost. I did not hear you come in, Dahlia said, her pulse racing. I have had centuries to perfect the art of moving silently. He walked into the kitchen, his eyes taking in the spread of food she had prepared. This smells extraordinary. Your grandmother's recipes? Yes. You cook them when you are upset. I have noticed the pattern. He picked up a toaststone and examined it. What has upset you today, Dahlia? She should lie. She should deflect. But something about the way he looked at her, the genuine curiosity in his ancient eyes, made her tell the truth. Your sister told me about Caterina, she said quietly. Theron went very still. The toaststone crumbled in his hand, forgotten. Did she? He said, his voice carefully neutral. She wanted me to understand what I was getting into. What you are like when someone you care about betrays you. Dahlia forced herself to meet his eyes. She wanted me to know that you do not forgive. That you do not forget. That you carry grudges across generations. All true. Theron dusted the crumbs from his fingers. And does this knowledge frighten you? Yes. Good. It should. He moved closer, and Dahlia held her ground. I am not a good man, Dahlia. I am not even a man, not really. I am a creature who has lived long enough to watch empires rise and fall, long enough to understand that mercy is weakness and forgiveness is a fairy tale humans tell themselves to sleep at night. I do not believe that, Dahlia said. Then you are a fool. Maybe. But I have seen you with Sovereign. I have watched you with Seraphina. You love them. You protect them. That is not a monster. That is family. Theron laughed, but there was no humor in it. I killed a man in front of you 3 days ago. I broke his body apart like kindling. And that same night, I destroyed 12 others. I painted the streets with their remains. Does that sound like family to you? You did it to protect me, Dahlia said, her voice shaking. You did it because someone threatened your home, your sister, your dog, and yes, me. That is not evil, Theron. That is loyalty taken to an extreme, but it is not evil. You are romanticizing violence. And you are punishing yourself for something that happened 200 years ago. The words burst out of her before she could stop them. Katerina betrayed you. She hurt you and Seraphina. She deserved punishment. But you are still letting her control you. You are still letting her dictate how you see the world, how you trust people, how you love. Theron's eyes blazed with sudden fury. Do not presume to understand me, human. You have lived 3 decades. I have lived 14 times that. You know nothing of the weight of centuries, of watching everyone you care about die or betray you, of learning that trust is currency and everyone eventually spends it for their own gain. Then teach me, Dahlia challenged. Stop pushing me away and actually talk to me. Tell me why you are so afraid of caring about someone that you would rather be alone for eternity than take another risk. Because the last time I took that risk, my sister nearly died. Theron's voice cracked like thunder. Because I carried her unconscious body through flames while the woman I loved watched from a window and smiled. Because I had to choose between vengeance and healing, and I chose vengeance because it was the only thing that made sense. The kitchen fell silent. Theron was breathing hard, his chest heaving, his hands clenched into fists. Dahlia could see the pain in his face, raw and ancient and still bleeding after 2 centuries. She did something incredibly stupid. She closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him. Theron froze. For a moment, he stood like a statue, his body rigid with shock. Dahlia half expected him to push her away, to snarl at her, to remind her that he was a vampire king and she was just the cook. Instead, slowly, hesitantly, his arms came up around her. He held her like she was made of glass. Like she might shatter at any moment. His face pressed into her hair, and she felt him breathe her in, felt the tension slowly draining from his body. You terrify me, he whispered against her temple. You walk into my home with your kindness and your courage and your refusal to see me as the monster I know I am. You make me want things I swore I would never want again. You make me hope, Dahlia. And hope is the most dangerous thing a creature like me can feel. Dahlia pulled back just enough to look up at him. What do you hope for? Theron's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with heartbreaking gentleness. That perhaps I could be more than my worst moment, he said quietly. That perhaps you could see all of me, the violence and the rage and the obsession, and stay anyway. That perhaps, after 400 years of darkness, I might have found something worth protecting more than my own pride. Theron, Dahlia breathed. But I am also practical, he continued, his voice growing harder. And the practical truth is that I am a vampire, and you are human. I will live forever, and you will grow old and die. I will watch your hair turn gray and your body fail and your light fade, and there is nothing I can do to stop it unless... He stopped abruptly. Unless what? Dahlia asked. Theron's eyes searched hers. Unless I turn you. Unless I make you like me. Immortal. But I swore after Katerina that I would never turn another human. That I would never take that choice, that life, away from someone again. She begged me for immortality, and I was going to give it to her, and then she used that promise to manipulate me. I am not Katerina, Dahlia said firmly. I know. His hand was still on her face, his touch achingly tender. That is what terrifies me most of all. You are real. You are good. And I do not know how to deserve you. Dahlia rose on her toes and pressed her forehead against his. Then stop trying to deserve me, she whispered. And just try being with me. No calculations. No strategies. Just this. Just us. For a long moment, they stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by the scent of her grandmother's cooking and the warmth of the stove and the steady presence of Sovereign watching from the corner. And then Theron did something he had not done in 200 years. He let himself hope. The next 2 weeks felt like a dream Dahlia was afraid to wake from. Theron began joining her in the kitchen every evening. Not as an employer observing his staff, but as something else. Something softer. He would sit at the large wooden table while she cooked, Sovereign stretched across both their feet, and they would talk. Really talk. He told her about his childhood in the 1600s, about growing up the second son of a minor English lord who had no idea his wife had been turned centuries before and had passed the vampire curse to all her children. He told her about his older brother, Edmund, who had been everything a firstborn should be. Strong, brave, noble. Edmund had protected Theron and Seraphina through their early vampire years, had taught them to control their hunger, had shown them how to move through the human world without drawing attention. He was killed in 1803, Theron said quietly, his fingers absently stroking Sovereign's ears. Vampire hunters. They staked him while he slept and burned his body before we could save him. His voice was distant, lost in memory. I hunted them for 40 years. Every single person involved. Every single person who knew and did nothing. I made sure their families understood the cost of what they had done. Dahlia, who was kneading dough for empanadas, paused in her work. Do you regret it? The revenge? Theron was silent for a long moment. No. They took my brother. They took the best of us. They deserved everything I did to them. He looked up at her, his pale eyes searching. Does that make me irredeemable in your eyes? It makes you someone who loved his brother, Dahlia said carefully. It makes you someone who feels things deeply, even if the way you express those feelings is terrifying to most people. She returned to her kneading. My father died when I was 16. Cancer. Quick and brutal. And I remember lying in bed at night, furious that I could not hurt the disease back. Could not make it pay for taking him from me. If I had been like you, if I had your power, I do not know what I would have done. You would have done better than me, Theron said softly. You have a good heart, Dahlia. Mine has been dark for far too long. I do not believe that. She shaped the dough into circles, her movements practiced and sure. I think you have been hurt, and you learned to hurt back because it was safer than staying vulnerable. But you are still capable of goodness. You are still capable of love. You prove it every day. How? She smiled. You make sure the kitchen is stocked with my favorite ingredients before I even know I need them. You had someone track down plantains from a specific market in Brixton because I mentioned once that they reminded me of home. You let Sovereign sleep in my room even though he has slept in yours for 12 years. You are good, Theron Ashworth. You just do not want anyone to know it. Theron stared at her, something shifting in his ancient features. Then, slowly, he smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine and devastatingly beautiful. You are dangerous, he said. I am a cook from Brooklyn. Exactly. Dangerous. 3 nights later, Theron took her to the roof. She had not even known the manor had roof access until he led her up a hidden staircase, Sovereign bounding ahead of them with puppy-like excitement. When they emerged into the night air, Dahlia gasped. London spread out before them like a carpet of stars. The Thames snaked through the city, reflecting lights from 1,000 buildings. She could see the London Eye in the distance, could make out the dome of St. Paul's Cathedral, could hear the distant sounds of traffic and life and humanity continuing on below them, unaware that monsters walked among them. "I come up here when I need to remember why I stay," Theron said, standing beside her at the edge. "400 years in this world, and it still manages to surprise me. New buildings. New technologies. New ways for humans to create beauty out of chaos. It is incredible," Dahlia breathed. "It is." But he was not looking at the city. He was looking at her. She turned to meet his gaze and found him closer than she had realized. Close enough that she could see the faint scar on his jawline, a mark from before he had been turned. Close enough to count the impossible shades of gray in his eyes. "Dahlia," he said quietly, "I need you to understand something. What I feel for you is not simple. It is not easy. It is the kind of feeling that has started wars and ended kingdoms. I have existed for centuries without letting anyone close, and now you have walked into my life and dismantled every defense I spent lifetimes building." Her heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "Theron, I am not finished." His hand came up to cup her face, his touch cool but achingly gentle. "If you stay with me, if you choose this, you need to know what you are choosing. I am possessive. I am jealous. I will want to know where you are every moment of every day. I will destroy anyone who tries to hurt you. I will give you everything I have and demand everything you are in return." His thumb brushed across her lips. "I will love you with an intensity that will terrify you. And I will never, never let you go." Dahlia should have been afraid. Every reasonable part of her brain was screaming warnings, listing all the reasons this was a terrible idea. He was a vampire. He was immortal. He was admitting to obsessive tendencies that would send any therapist running for their prescription pad. But when she looked into his eyes, she did not see a monster. She saw a man who had been alone for 200 years and was terrified of hoping again. She saw someone who understood loss and loneliness and the desperate need to matter to another person. She saw herself reflected back, all her own fears and longings laid bare. "I am choosing this," she whispered. "I am choosing you." Theron's eyes closed, as if her words had physically struck him. When he opened them again, they were blazing with something fierce and tender and utterly consuming. "Then you are mine," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "For however long you will have me. You are mine, Dahlia Reyes, and I am yours." He kissed her then. It was nothing like she had imagined. His lips were cool but soft, moving against hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about his capacity for violence. He kissed her like she was precious, like she was fragile, like she was the only thing in the world worth savoring. When they finally broke apart, both breathless despite only one of them needing air, Sovereign barked happily and wagged his tail. Theron laughed, the sound bright and surprised and young. "Even my dog approves. I suppose it is official then." Dahlia grinned, her heart so full it ached. "What exactly is official?" "You. Me. This impossible thing we are attempting." He pulled her close, tucking her against his chest, his chin resting on the top of her head. "I have no idea how to do this, you know. I have not courted anyone in 2 centuries. I barely remember the rules." "There are no rules," Dahlia said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "We make this up as we go. I can work with that." His arms tightened around her. "Though I should warn you, I am going to spoil you terribly. Serafina already has opinions about what jewels would suit your skin tone. And I may have already contacted a property developer about finding you a restaurant space in Shoreditch." Dahlia pulled back to stare at him. "Theron, you cannot just buy me a restaurant. I am 400 years old and wealthier than several small countries. I absolutely can buy you a restaurant. I can buy you 12 restaurants. I can buy you the entire street if you want it. That is not the point. The point," he interrupted, his eyes dancing with amusement, "is that you have a gift, and you deserve a place to share it. The point is that I want to give you everything you have ever dreamed of and several things you have not thought to dream yet. The point is that spoiling you makes me happier than I have been in decades, and you are going to have to accept that this is who I am." Dahlia opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. She saw the hope in his face, the almost childlike eagerness to please. This was how he showed love. Grand gestures. Overwhelming generosity. Protection and provision taken to impossible extremes. "One restaurant," she said finally. "Small. Nothing fancy. And I pick the location." Theron's smile could have lit up the entire city. Done. The days that followed were the happiest Dahlia had ever known. She cooked, and Theron learned to enjoy food again, remembering what it was to savor flavors even if he no longer needed sustenance. She taught him her grandmother's recipes, and he taught her about wines from vineyards that no longer existed, about spices that had been traded along routes now vanished from maps. He introduced her properly to his world. She met the other members of his coven, vampires who had served the Ashworth family for decades or centuries. They were wary of her at first, this human who had captured their king's attention, but Dahlia won them over the same way she won everyone over. With food, with kindness, with genuine interest in their stories. Serafina became something like a friend, teaching Dahlia about vampire politics and fashion and which members of London society were secretly creatures of the night. They went shopping on Bond Street, Serafina insisting on buying Dahlia an entire wardrobe worthy of a vampire king's partner, and Dahlia laughing at the absurdity of her new life while simultaneously loving every moment of it. And Sovereign, beautiful loyal Sovereign, appointed himself their constant companion. He followed Dahlia through the manor during the day and slept beside Theron's coffin during his rest. He seemed to understand that his two favorite people had found each other, and his contentment was evident in every wagging tail and happy bark. One evening, Dahlia was in the library with Sovereign sprawled across her lap, reading a first edition of Dracula that Theron kept specifically for the irony, when the vampire himself appeared in the doorway. "I have something for you," he said, his tone unusually nervous. Dahlia set the book aside, gently moving Sovereign off her lap despite his protests. "Theron, we talked about this. No more gifts. The diamond earrings were too much. The car was insane. You cannot keep." He held out a small leather journal. She stopped talking. "It is not expensive," he said quickly. "Well, the leather is from a rare Florentine tanner, but that is not the point. The point is what is inside." Dahlia took the journal with trembling hands. She opened it and found pages filled with elegant handwriting. Recipes. Dozens of them. Centuries of them. "My mother's recipes," Theron said softly. "From before she was turned. She taught me to cook when I was a boy, before I knew what we were, before everything became complicated. She said that cooking was love made tangible. That it was the way we cared for each other when words were not enough." He moved closer, his eyes vulnerable in a way she had never seen. "I have not thought about these recipes in 300 years. But when I watch you cook, when I see you pour your heart into every meal, I remember her. I remember being human. I remember what it felt like to hope." Dahlia felt tears streaming down her face. She clutched the journal to her chest, overwhelmed by the significance of what he had just given her. Not jewels or cars or restaurants, but a piece of his past. A piece of his humanity. A piece of his heart. "This is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me," she whispered. Theron pulled her into his arms, and she felt him press a kiss to the top of her head. "You gave me something I thought I had lost forever," he murmured against her hair. "You gave me the ability to feel joy without waiting for the pain to follow. The least I can do is share my mother's legacy with you." They stood there in the library, holding each other, while Sovereign watched with knowing eyes and London carried on below them, unaware that something rare and precious was blooming in the heart of a vampire who had been cold for far too long. 2 weeks into their relationship, Dahlia made Theron laugh so hard he nearly fell off his chair. They were in the kitchen, and she was attempting to teach him how to make her grandmother's arroz con pollo. He was being surprisingly inept, his centuries of grace and coordination apparently not extending to measuring rice properly. "How is this so difficult?" he muttered, staring at the measuring cup as if it had personally offended him. "I have mastered 17 languages. I have negotiated peace treaties between warring covens. I once spent 30 years infiltrating the French court. But I cannot measure rice. You are overthinking it, Dahlia said, trying not to laugh. It is just rice. 1 part rice, 2 parts water. That is what I am doing. You are doing 1 part rice, 1 part water, and 1 part anxiety. She moved behind him, placing her hands over his, guiding him. Relax. Cooking is about intuition, not precision. Feel it. Feel the rice, Theron deadpanned. Yes. Dahlia, I have not felt warm in 400 years. I do not think I am capable of feeling rice. She burst out laughing, and after a moment, he joined her, his shoulders shaking with genuine mirth. Sovereign barked from his spot by the stove, as if laughing along with them. It was perfect. It was domestic. It was everything Dahlia had never known she wanted. And it was about to shatter completely. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, slipped under the manor's front door while the vampires slept and the staff were occupied elsewhere. Dahlia found it while taking Sovereign for his afternoon walk through the gardens. It was cream-colored, expensive, with her name written in elegant script across the front. No return address. No postage. Just her name. She should have shown it to Theron immediately. She would regret that decision for the rest of her life. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed a woman Dahlia had never seen before. She was young, maybe early 20s, with dark curly hair and warm brown skin. She was laughing at something off camera, her smile bright and unguarded. Beautiful. Alive. The note was brief. Her name is Dahlia Reyes. Your cousin. The daughter of your father's brother, the family you lost touch with after your father died. She lives in Miami now. Works as a teacher. Loves her students. Coaches soccer on weekends. She has no idea that vampires exist. No idea that her cousin is sleeping with the King of London. No idea how much danger she is in simply by being related to you. The Valancourt Coven remembers what Theron did to our people. 12 dead. Dozens more injured. They want compensation. They want blood. Meet us tonight, 10 p.m., the abandoned warehouse on Copper Street in Rotherhithe. Come alone. Tell no one. Or Dahlia Reyes will learn exactly what monsters are real, right before she becomes a message written in her own blood. Bring this letter. Burn after reading. Dahlia's hands shook so badly the paper fluttered to the ground. Sophia. She had a cousin. She had family she did not even know about, family her father had lost touch with after some argument she barely remembered. And now that family was in danger because of her. Because she had fallen in love with a vampire. Because Theron had protected her with the kind of violence that made enemies desperate for revenge. Sovereign pressed against her leg, whining softly. What do I do? She whispered to the dog. If I tell Theron, he will go to war. He will hunt down everyone involved and he will not stop until they are all dead. And they will kill her. They will kill Sophia just to prove a point. She thought about the stories Theron had told her. The way he had spent decades pursuing vengeance. The way he never forgave, never forgot, never let go. If she told him, this would escalate. More death. More violence. More blood. But if she went alone, if she talked to them, maybe she could negotiate. Maybe she could find a peaceful solution. Maybe she could protect both Sophia and Theron. It was stupid. It was dangerous. It was exactly the kind of thing Theron had warned her never to do. But it was her family. Her responsibility. Her choice to be with Theron, her consequences to manage. She looked at the photograph of Sophia one more time. The bright smile. The innocent joy. Then she burned the letter, tucked the photograph into her pocket, and made the worst decision of her life. At 9:45 p.m., Dahlia slipped out of Ashworth Manor. She had told Mr. Hartwell she was going for a walk to clear her head. She had left Sovereign in her room with a treat, ignoring his confused whining. She had waited until Theron was in meetings with the coven elders, discussing politics that would keep him occupied for hours. She took an Uber to Rotherhithe, her heart pounding the entire way. The driver tried to make small conversation about the weather, about American tourists in London, about the best places to get fish and chips. Dahlia could barely hear him over the roaring in her ears. The warehouse was exactly as threatening as it sounded. Abandoned. Dark. The kind of place where bad things happened and no one heard you scream. Dahlia walked through the broken front entrance, her phone clutched in one hand like a useless talisman. "Hello," she called out, her voice echoing in the empty space. "I am here. I came alone like you asked. Please, just tell me what you want. Tell me how to keep Sophia safe." Lights flooded the warehouse, blinding her. When her eyes adjusted, she saw them. 5 vampires, arranged in a semicircle, all watching her with expressions ranging from amusement to contempt. The one in the center was a woman, elegant and cold, with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. "Dahlia Reyes," the woman said, her accent French and refined. "The human who tamed Theron Ashworth. I confess, I did not think you would actually come. I thought surely you would run to your monster and let him solve your problems with violence, as he solves all his problems." "I want to solve this peacefully," Dahlia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Whatever Theron did to your coven, I am sorry. But killing my cousin will not bring back the people you lost. It will just create more death. More pain." The vampire woman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think this is about your cousin? You silly child. There is no cousin. We made her up. Found a random girl on social media with your last name and spun a story. And you believed it so easily, so desperately." The words hit Dahlia like a physical blow. "What?" "This was a test," the woman continued, circling her like a predator. "A test to see if you were like Katerina. To see if you would sneak behind Theron's back, if you would meet with his enemies in secret, if you would betray his trust for your own reasons, no matter how noble you think they are." She stopped directly in front of Dahlia. "And you failed. Or succeeded, depending on one's perspective." Dahlia felt her blood turn to ice. "You are going to tell him." "Oh, we are going to do better than that." The woman smiled, revealing fangs. "We are going to show him. We have been filming this entire conversation. And in about..." She checked her watch, 3 minutes. "This video will be delivered to Ashworth Manor with a lovely note explaining how his precious human met with the Valancourt coven in secret. Just like Katerina did." "No," Dahlia whispered. "No, please. It is not what it looks like. I was trying to protect." "It does not matter what you were trying to do," the vampire interrupted. "All that matters is what it looks like. And it looks like betrayal." She leaned in close. "We could not destroy Theron Ashworth in battle. He is too strong, too ruthless, too protected. But you? You can destroy him from the inside. You can make him feel that pain again. You can remind him why he should never, never trust a human." The vampires vanished, moving within human speed, leaving Dahlia alone in the warehouse with the crushing realization of what she had done. She ran. She ran back to the street, called an Uber with shaking hands, and prayed she could get back to the manor before the video arrived. Before Theron saw it. Before everything shattered. But she was too late. When Dahlia burst through the front doors of Ashworth Manor, she found chaos. Staff members were running through hallways. She could hear Seraphina's voice raised in alarm. And from the study, she heard something that made her heart stop. The sound of things breaking. Glass shattering. Wood splintering. And beneath it all, a sound of rage and anguish that barely sounded human. Mr. Hartwell appeared at her side, his face grave. "Miss Reyes. The master has received a video. I do not know what it contains, but I have never seen him like this. Not in 30 years of service. I need to see him," Dahlia said desperately. "I need to explain. I do not think that is wise." But Dahlia was already running toward the study. She threw open the doors and stopped dead. The room was destroyed. Every piece of furniture overturned. Every painting torn from the walls. The antique desk split clean in half. And in the center of it all stood Theron, his white hair wild around his face, his eyes blazing with a fury that made him look truly monstrous. Sovereign cowered in the corner, whimpering. "Theron," Dahlia breathed. He turned to look at her, and the expression on his face broke her heart. It was not just anger. It was betrayal. It was pain. It was the look of a man who had just watched his worst nightmare come true all over again. 200 years, he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. 200 years I kept everyone at a distance. 200 years I refused to trust. 200 years I remembered the lesson Katerina taught me. He took a step toward her. And then you arrived. With your kindness and your cooking and your complete inability to see me as a threat. And like a fool, like an absolute fool, I let myself believe you were different. I am different, Dahlia said, tears streaming down her face. Theron, please listen to me. They tricked me. They said they had my cousin, said they would hurt her if I did not come alone. So you went to meet my enemies in secret, Theron interrupted. You snuck out of my home. You lied to my staff. You did exactly what Katerina did, and you expect me to believe it was different because your intentions were good? Yes. Dahlia moved toward him, desperate to make him understand. I was trying to protect you. I did not want more death. I did not want you to have to destroy more people because of me. That was not your choice to make. Theron's roar shook the walls. Dahlia stumbled backward, genuinely frightened for the first time since she had met him. You do not get to decide what risks I take, he continued, his voice dropping to something cold and deadly. You do not get to protect me like I am some fragile thing that needs sheltering. I am 400 years old. I have survived wars and betrayals and losses you cannot imagine. And if I choose to destroy my enemies to keep you safe, that is my choice. My decision. My consequences to bear. I was just trying to do the right thing, Dahlia sobbed. The right thing, Theron repeated bitterly. The right thing would have been to trust me. The right thing would have been to tell me the moment you received that letter. The right thing would have been to remember that I have enemies who would do anything to hurt me, and meeting them in secret is exactly how Katerina brought my entire world crashing down. He turned away from her, his hands clenched into fists. I told you what I am, he said quietly. I told you I do not forgive. I told you I carry grudges across generations. And still you thought you could lie to me, could betray my trust, could walk into enemy territory like it meant nothing. It was not a betrayal, Dahlia insisted, her voice breaking. I love you. Everything I did was because I love you and I could not stand the thought of more people dying because of me. Katerina said she loved me too, Theron said, and his voice was utterly empty now. Right up until the moment she smiled at me from that window while I carried my sister's body through the flames. The silence was deafening. I am not Katerina, Dahlia whispered. No, Theron agreed. You are worse. Because she was a stranger when we met. But you? I let you in. I gave you everything. I broke every rule I set for myself. I let myself hope. He finally turned to look at her, and his eyes were dead. And you still lied to me. You still chose to handle things alone rather than trust me. You still proved that everyone will eventually disappoint me. Theron, please. Get out. The words were soft but final. What? Dahlia felt the ground disappearing beneath her feet. Get out of my home. Get out of my life. Get out before I do something we will both regret. His jaw was tight, his whole body vibrating with restrained violence. I want you gone by morning. Mr. Hartwell will arrange transportation. You will be compensated generously for your time. But I never want to see your face again. You do not mean that, Dahlia said desperately. You are angry, you are hurt, but you do not mean that. I have never meant anything more in my entire existence. Theron's voice could have cut diamonds. You are not special, Dahlia Reyes. You are not different. You are just another human who thought she knew better. Another lesson learned. Another mistake I will not make again. Each word was a knife to her heart. I am sorry, Dahlia sobbed. I am so sorry. I made a mistake. I was stupid and scared and I made the wrong choice. But I love you. I love you, Theron. Please do not do this. Please. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Something that looked like longing, like regret, like the urge to pull her close and forgive everything. Then it was gone, replaced by cold stone. Sovereign, he called. The dog rose on shaking legs, looking between his master and Dahlia with confused, unhappy eyes. Come, Theron commanded. Sovereign whined. He took a step toward Dahlia. Now. The dog flinched and went to Theron's side, his tail tucked, his whole body radiating misery. Even Sovereign was being taken from her. You have until sunrise, Theron said, not looking at her anymore. After that, if you are still in London, I will not be responsible for what I do. He walked out of the destroyed study, Sovereign following reluctantly, and left Dahlia alone among the wreckage. She sank to her knees on the broken glass and wept. In the hallway outside, Serafina caught her brother's arm. Theron, she said urgently. You cannot do this. She made a mistake, yes, but it was not the same as Katerina. She was trying to protect you. Do not defend her to me, Theron said, his voice hollow. Not tonight, sister. You love her. I know you do. And she loves you. I have seen it. Everyone has seen it. Love is not enough. Theron pulled away from her grip. Love did not stop Katerina from betraying me. Love did not prevent tonight. Love is just another weakness that my enemies will exploit until I learn to cut it out completely. He disappeared down the hallway, leaving Serafina staring after him with tears in her ancient eyes. You are going to regret this, she whispered to the darkness. You are going to regret this so much, brother. Upstairs, Dahlia packed her single suitcase with shaking hands. Everything Theron had given her, the clothes, the jewels, the expensive items, she left behind. She took only what she had brought with her. Her grandmother's recipe journal. A few pieces of clothing. The photograph of her parents. And tucked between the pages of the journal, she placed the one thing she had stolen. The leather journal Theron had given her. His mother's recipes. The piece of his heart he had shared. She knew she should leave it. She had no right to keep it after what she had done. But it was the only piece of him she had left. At 4:47 a.m., just before sunrise, Dahlia Reyes walked out of Ashworth Manor for the last time. Mr. Hartwell had arranged a car. Had pressed an envelope of money into her hands that she knew she would never spend. Had looked at her with such sadness that she almost broke down again. He will forgive you eventually, the old butler said gently. The master is stubborn and he is old and he has been hurt before. But I have worked for him for 3 decades, and I have never seen him as happy as he has been these past weeks. That has to count for something. I broke his trust, Dahlia said numbly. Just like she did. He will never forgive that. The car pulled away, carrying her toward the airport, toward a flight back to New York, toward a life that would feel empty and colorless after living in Theron's world. She pressed her face against the window and watched Ashworth Manor disappear into the London fog. Somewhere inside, a vampire king stood at his window and watched her go, his white hair catching the pre-dawn light, his ancient heart breaking all over again. And in the corner of his room, Sovereign howled. 3 weeks passed like years. Dahlia was back in New York, staying in a cramped sublet in Queens that smelled like old cigarettes and broken dreams. She had not returned to Brooklyn. She could not bear to walk streets that would remind her of who she had been before Theron, before London, before she had tasted what love could feel like when it consumed you completely. She barely cooked anymore. The joy had drained out of it. Every time she opened her grandmother's recipe journal, she saw Theron's mother's recipes tucked inside, and the grief would hit her so hard she could not breathe. She had tried calling, tried emailing, tried reaching out to Serafina, to Mr. Hartwell, to anyone who might convince Theron to listen to her explanation. Nothing. Radio silence. It was as if she had never existed in his world at all. She lay awake at night, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying that night over and over. The letter. The warehouse. The terrible, sinking realization that she had been manipulated. The look on Theron's face when he had sent her away. She had made a mistake. She knew that. She had let fear override trust. She had tried to solve a problem alone instead of turning to the man who had sworn to protect her. But she had not betrayed him. Not really. Not the way Katerina had. And yet, she had hurt him just as deeply. On the 23rd day of her exile, Dahlia made her second terrible decision. She was scrolling through her phone, barely seeing the screen, when an email appeared. Unknown sender. Subject line, a chance to make things right. Her finger hovered over the delete button. She opened it instead. Miss Reyes. My name is Vivian Valancourt. We met briefly in that warehouse, though I regret the deception we employed. I have been watching the aftermath of that night, and I confess, I feel a degree of guilt. Our intention was to expose a potential threat to our coven, not to destroy a genuine love. If you are willing, I would like to meet with you again. I have information that could help clear your name with Theron. Proof that you were manipulated, that your intentions were pure. He will not take my calls, but he might listen if the evidence comes from you. Meet me in Paris. I will explain everything. This is your chance to fix what we broke. Below was an address in the Marais district and a date 3 days away. Every instinct Dahlia had screamed that this was a trap. But the possibility, the tiny, desperate possibility that she could prove to Theron that she had not betrayed him, that she could show him evidence of the manipulation, that she could earn back even a fraction of his trust. It was enough. She booked a flight to Paris. Theron Ashworth had not fed properly in 3 weeks. He sat in his study, the same study he had destroyed the night Dahlia left, now meticulously repaired by staff who had worked in terrified silence. Everything looked exactly as it had before. Perfect. Pristine. Cold. Exactly like his life before she had walked into it. Serafina watched him from the doorway, her expression a mixture of concern and frustration. You are being an idiot, she said bluntly. Your opinion has been noted, Theron replied without looking up from the book he was pretending to read. She made a mistake. One mistake. Born from fear and a misguided desire to protect you. That is not the same as Katerina's calculated betrayal, and you know it. She met with my enemies in secret. Because they threatened an innocent woman. Because she has a good heart and did not want more death on her conscience. Serafina crossed the room and snatched the book from his hands. You are punishing her for being compassionate. For trying to solve a problem without violence. For being exactly the kind of person you claimed to love. Theron's jaw tightened. She lied to me. She made a mistake. Serafina threw the book across the room. A human mistake. She is not immortal, Theron. She has not had 400 years to learn perfect strategy. She is a 31-year-old woman who spent most of her life struggling to survive, and when faced with an impossible situation, she made the wrong choice. That does not make her Katerina. It makes her someone I cannot trust. It makes her human. Serafina's voice cracked. And if you cannot forgive human mistakes, then you have no business being with a human at all. Turn her or let her go, but stop this torture where you push her away and then suffer because she is gone. Theron stood abruptly, his eyes blazing. I will not turn her. I will never turn another human. That is not a gift, sister. It is a curse. Then you have made your choice. Serafina's voice was cold now. You have chosen your pride over your happiness. Your past pain over your future joy. I hope it keeps you warm for the next few centuries, brother, because that is all you will have. She swept out of the study, leaving Theron alone. He walked to the window, the same window where he had watched Dahlia's car disappear into the fog. London sprawled before him, indifferent to his suffering. Sovereign padded into the room, moving slowly. The dog had barely eaten since Dahlia left. Had spent hours each day sitting by the door to her old room, waiting for her to return. Even now, he looked at Theron with reproachful eyes. "Do not look at me like that," Theron said quietly. "I did what had to be done. She broke my trust. She proved that humans will always..." He stopped. He was repeating the same justifications he had been telling himself for 3 weeks. And they sounded hollower every time. The truth was, he missed her. He missed her laughter in his kitchen. He missed her terrible jokes and her stubborn courage. He missed the way she looked at him like he was a man instead of a monster. He missed waking each evening knowing she was somewhere in his home, cooking or reading or playing with Sovereign. He missed her so much it felt like dying. But forgiveness meant vulnerability. Forgiveness meant admitting that he could be hurt. Forgiveness meant taking the risk that she could do it again, could lie again, could betray him again. And he had sworn 200 years ago that he would never take that risk. "She is better off without me," Theron said to Sovereign. "I would have consumed her. Possessed her. Turned her into something she was not meant to be. This is better. This is..." His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost declined. Something made him answer. Theron Ashworth. His voice was cold, professional. "Monsieur Ashworth." The voice was female, French, familiar. "This is Vivian Valancourt. I am calling with information you need to hear." Every muscle in Theron's body went rigid. "You have 30 seconds before I track this call and come for your throat. Your human, Dahlia Reyes, has contacted me. She is flying to Paris tomorrow to meet with me. She believes I am going to give her evidence to clear her name. She believes I am going to help her win back your trust." Vivian's voice was smooth, almost amused. "I thought you would want to know that she is still working with your enemies behind your back. Still meeting with us in secret. Still choosing to lie to you." The phone cracked in Theron's grip. "You are manipulating her again," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Am I? Or is she simply showing you who she truly is? A human who will always choose her own judgment over yours. Who will always believe she knows better." Vivian paused. "I am sending you the email chain. Her responses. Her willingness to meet with me despite everything that happened last time. Read it yourself and tell me I am wrong about her character." The call ended. A moment later, screenshots appeared in his messages. Dahlia's emails. Her agreeing to meet. Her desperate hope that she could fix things. Her continued willingness to trust his enemies over him. Theron stared at the messages for a long moment. Then he made a call. Dahlia landed in Paris on a gray Wednesday afternoon. She took a taxi to the Marais, her heart pounding with desperate hope. The address led to an elegant cafe, the kind of place where tourists drank overpriced coffee and pretended to be locals. Vivian was waiting at an outdoor table, looking impossibly chic in a cream-colored suit. "Miss Reyes," she said warmly. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." Dahlia sat, her hands clutching her purse. "You said you had evidence. Proof that I was manipulated." "I do." Vivian slid a manila envelope across the table. "Everything is in here. Our planning documents. Emails showing how we researched you, created the fake cousin, orchestrated the entire scenario. With this, Theron will have to acknowledge that you were a victim, not a conspirator." Dahlia reached for the envelope with shaking hands. "But first," Vivian continued, "I need something from you." Dahlia's hand froze. "What?" "Information. Nothing that will harm Theron or his coven, I promise. Just small details. His schedule. His vulnerabilities. Where he goes when he needs to be alone. Vivian's smile was kind, understanding. You see, the Valancourt coven wants peace. We want to negotiate a proper treaty with the Ashworths. But Theron will not meet with us. If you could tell us how to approach him, where he might be receptive to conversation, we could end this conflict peacefully. Every alarm bell in Dahlia's head was ringing. You want me to spy on him, she said slowly. I want you to facilitate peace. And in return, I give you the evidence you need to prove your innocence. Vivian leaned forward. Is that not worth it? A few harmless details in exchange for getting him back. Dahlia stared at the envelope. At the promise of redemption. At the chance to make Theron understand. She thought about his face the night he had sent her away. The pain. The betrayal. The certainty that she was just like Katerina. If she gave Vivian this information, she would be proving him right. If she walked away, she lost her chance at the evidence. I need to think about it, Dahlia said, standing abruptly. Of course. Vivian's smile did not waver. But do not think too long. This offer expires when you leave Paris. Dahlia walked away from the cafe, her mind racing. She made it 3 blocks before she stopped, pulled out her phone, and did what she should have done 3 weeks ago. She called Theron. It rang once. Twice. Hello, Dahlia. His voice sent a shockwave through her system. Cold. Controlled. But he had answered. Theron, I am in Paris. I am about to make another terrible mistake and I need you to stop me. The words tumbled out in a rush. Vivian Valancourt offered me evidence that could prove I was manipulated. But she wants information about you in exchange. About your schedule and your vulnerabilities. And I almost considered it. I almost betrayed you for real this time because I was so desperate to prove I did not betray you the first time. She was crying now, words breaking apart. I am calling because I need you to know I did not give her anything. I will not give her anything. I am choosing you over the evidence. I am choosing to trust that eventually, someday, you might forgive me, even without proof. Because that is what I should have done the first time. I should have trusted you. And I am so sorry that I did not. The silence on the other end was deafening. Theron? Are you there? I am here. His voice was strange, tight. Where are you right now? 3 blocks from the cafe. Walking toward the Seine. Stay there. Do not move. Do not go back to Vivian. Do not go anywhere. Why? What? Because I am already in Paris, Theron said quietly. I have been here since yesterday. And you just walked away from a trap that would have gotten you killed. Dahlia's blood turned to ice. What do you mean killed? The evidence in that envelope is fake. Vivian's plan was to get information from you, then eliminate you and make it look like you were working with them all along. A final insult to me. A final twist of the knife. His voice was raw now, stripped of its usual control. I was watching from across the street. I was ready to intervene if you took the envelope. And then you walked away. You called me instead. You were watching me, Dahlia said numbly. I have been watching you since you left London, Theron admitted. I had people monitoring your apartment. Tracking your phone. I knew the moment you booked a flight to Paris. I knew you were walking into danger. He paused. I told myself I did not care. That you made your choices and could suffer the consequences. But the truth is, if Vivian had hurt you, I would have burned Paris to the ground. Dahlia could not breathe. You still care. I never stopped. His voice broke on the words. I sent you away because I was terrified. Because you made me feel things I had not felt in 2 centuries, and when you left that night, when you met with my enemies behind my back, all I could see was Katerina. All I could feel was that same betrayal. And I could not survive it again, Dahlia. I could not let you close enough to destroy me. So you destroyed us first, she whispered. Yes. Dahlia looked up and saw him. He was standing 50 feet away, near a bookstall along the Seine. His white hair was pulled back, his long coat billowing in the autumn wind. Even from a distance, she could see the anguish in his face. She started walking toward him. He stayed frozen, watching her approach like a man watching his salvation and his damnation walk toward him in the same body. When she was close enough to touch, she stopped. "I made a mistake," she said quietly. "I should have trusted you. I should have come to you the moment I received that first letter. I let fear make my decisions, and I hurt you. I am sorry, Theron. I am so sorry." "I know," he said. His hands were clenched at his sides, as if he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. "But knowing you are sorry does not erase what happened. Does not change the fact that you lied to me, met with my enemies, proved that my worst fears about trusting humans were justified. So where does that leave us?" Dahlia asked, tears streaming down her face. Theron looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was wrecked. "I do not know. I love you. God help me, I love you so much it is destroying me. But I do not know if I can trust you again. I do not know if I can survive the fear that you will make another mistake, another choice without me, another decision that puts you in danger." His jaw tightened. "You terrify me, Dahlia Reyes. You make me vulnerable. And I have spent 400 years ensuring I am never vulnerable." "Then what do we do?" she whispered. Theron closed his eyes. "You go back to New York. You build the life you deserve, with someone who can give you normal. Someone who is not obsessed and possessive and broken by centuries of betrayal." He opened his eyes, and they were swimming with unshed tears. "And I will stay here, in my cold manor, with my sister and my dog and my memories of what it felt like to be happy for 3 perfect weeks." "That is not fair," Dahlia said, anger flaring through her grief. "You do not get to make this decision alone. You do not get to decide what I deserve or what life I should build. I am choosing you, Theron. Broken, obsessed, possessive, and all. I am choosing to fight for us. Even though I cannot forgive you?" His voice was barely audible. "Even though every time I look at you, part of me will remember that warehouse, that video, the way my heart shattered all over again?" Dahlia stepped closer, close enough to feel the cold radiating from his body. "Then I will spend every day proving to you that I am not her," she said fiercely. "I will be patient. I will be transparent. I will earn back your trust one moment at a time, even if it takes years. Even if it takes forever." She reached up and touched his face, felt him flinch and then lean into her palm. "Because you are worth fighting for. Because what we had was real. And because I know that somewhere underneath all that fear and anger, you still love me too." A single tear tracked down Theron's face. "I do," he whispered. "I love you so much it feels like dying." "Then let me stay," Dahlia begged. "Let me come home. We will figure out the rest." Theron caught her hand, pressed it harder against his face. "If you hurt me again," he said, his voice shaking, "if you lie to me again, if you ever meet with my enemies behind my back again, I will not survive it. Do you understand? There will be no third chance. No more forgiveness. I will cut you out of my life and I will never look back." "I understand," Dahlia said. "I swear to you, Theron. No more secrets. No more handling things alone. We are a team, or we are nothing." For a long moment, they stood there on the banks of the Seine, 2 broken people trying to figure out if love was enough to overcome fear. Then Theron pulled her into his arms and held her like a man drowning. "Come home," he murmured into her hair. "Come home and let us see if we can put these pieces back together." Dahlia wrapped her arms around him and held on. Behind them, unnoticed, Vivian Valancourt watched from the cafe with a cold smile. The seeds of doubt had been planted. The trust had been fractured. Even if they reconciled now, Theron would always wonder. Dahlia would always feel guilty. And eventually, that wound would tear them apart from the inside. Vivian's revenge was not loud or violent. It was patient. Just like she was. They returned to London together on a private jet Theron had chartered within an hour of their reconciliation in Paris. Dahlia sat beside him, their hands intertwined, neither speaking much. The silence was not uncomfortable, but it was heavy with everything unspoken. The forgiveness that had been offered but not fully absorbed. The trust that needed rebuilding. The fear that still lurked beneath the surface. When they arrived at Ashworth Manor, Sovereign was waiting at the door. The moment Dahlia stepped through the entrance, the massive German shepherd launched himself at her with a force that nearly knocked her over. He whined and barked and wagged his entire body, pressing against her legs, licking her hands, making sounds of pure joy that brought tears to her eyes. "I missed you too, handsome," she whispered, burying her face in his fur. "I missed you so much." Theron watched them, something softening in his expression. "He has been insufferable since you left. Refused to eat properly. Spent hours sitting by your door. Even Serafina could not console him." "Where is Serafina?" Dahlia asked, looking up. "Giving us space. She will appear eventually to say I told you so and gloat about being right." Despite everything, there was affection in his voice. "Come. You must be exhausted. Let me show you to your room." Dahlia's heart sank. "My room? Not our room?" Theron stopped, his back still to her. I assumed you would want your own space. While we figure this out." "Theron." She waited until he turned to face her. "I do not want space. I want you. I want us to work on this together, not separated by walls and fear." Something flickered across his ancient face. Hope, maybe. Or terror at hoping. "I do not know how to do this," he admitted quietly. "I do not know how to trust again without constantly waiting for betrayal." "Then we learn together," Dahlia said simply. "One day at a time." The first week back was difficult. Theron was trying, Dahlia could see that. But there was a distance in him that had not been there before. He was careful with her, polite, almost formal. As if she were a guest rather than the woman he loved. She did not push. She cooked his mother's recipes and her grandmother's recipes, slowly filling the manor with warmth and the scent of home. She spent time with Serafina, who had indeed gloated about being right but had also become a fierce ally in convincing Theron to let his guard down. She was patient. But patience was tested on the 8th night, when Theron came to her room at 2 a.m., his face stricken. "I cannot do this," he said without preamble. "I cannot sleep knowing you are here, in my home, in my life, and still feel this wall between us. I cannot keep pretending I am fine when every time you leave a room, I panic that you are not coming back. I cannot." Dahlia crossed to him and took his face in both hands. "Then stop pretending," she said firmly. "Stop being polite and distant and careful. Be angry with me if you need to be angry. Yell at me if you need to yell. But stop acting like I am a stranger." "I am afraid," Theron whispered, and the admission seemed to cost him everything. "I am 400 years old and I am terrified of a human woman who weighs barely anything and could not hurt me physically if she tried. I am afraid that if I let you all the way back in, you will leave again. Or worse, you will stay and then make another choice without me, another mistake, and I will have to choose between my love for you and my need to keep you safe." "I will make mistakes," Dahlia said steadily. "I am human. I am flawed. I will probably do things that frustrate you or scare you or make you want to lock me in this manner for my own protection. But I will never, never lie to you again. I will never meet with your enemies. I will never choose to handle things alone when I have you beside me. Promise me," Theron demanded, his hands coming up to grip her wrists. "Promise me on everything you hold sacred. I promise on my grandmother's memory. On my parents' graves. On the life we are trying to build together." She met his eyes. "I am yours, Theron. Completely. And I need you to trust that." He kissed her then, desperate and raw and full of all the emotion he had been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. I am yours too, he said roughly. Even when I am angry. Even when I am afraid. Even when every instinct tells me to push you away, I am still yours. Then let me in, Dahlia whispered. All the way. No more walls. That night, Theron carried her to his room, to the bed he had not shared with anyone in 200 years. And slowly, carefully, they began to rebuild what had been broken. 2 months later, Vivian Valancourt made her final move. Dahlia was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when Sovereign suddenly went rigid. A low growl rumbled from his chest, his ears flat against his head, his attention fixed on the doorway. What is it, boy? Dahlia asked, setting down her knife. The lights went out. Every light in the manor, all at once, plunging everything into darkness. Dahlia's heart lurched. She fumbled for her phone, but before she could reach it, a cold hand clamped over her mouth. Hello again, Miss Reyes, Vivian's voice purred in her ear. Did you really think I would let you have your happy ending? Did you think Theron Ashworth could simply reconcile with his pet human and face no consequences? Dahlia tried to scream, but Vivian's grip was iron. The Valancourt coven has been patient, Vivian continued. We have waited. We have watched. And now we are going to finish what we started. Theron destroyed 12 of our people. So we will take the one person he values above all else. A life for 12 lives. That seems fair, does it not? Sovereign lunged. The dog moved like black lightning, 70 pounds of pure protective fury. His jaws clamped down on Vivian's arm, tearing her away from Dahlia with a force that sent the vampire stumbling backward. Run! Dahlia screamed, not sure if she was talking to herself or the dog. But she did not run. She grabbed the cast-iron skillet from the stove and swung it with every ounce of strength she possessed, connecting with Vivian's skull with a satisfying crack. The vampire shrieked and backhanded Dahlia across the kitchen. She crashed into the counter, pain exploding across her ribs, her vision sparking with stars. Sovereign attacked again, going for Vivian's throat this time. And then the kitchen door exploded inward. Theron Ashworth entered like the wrath of God. He moved so fast Dahlia could barely track him. One moment he was in the doorway, the next he had Vivian by the throat, lifting her off the ground with one hand. His white hair whipped around him as if caught in a windstorm. His eyes blazed with fury that made his rage from weeks ago look like mild irritation. You came into my home, he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. You put your hands on what is mine. You threatened the woman I love in her own kitchen. Theron, Vivian choked. I have been patient with your coven, Theron continued, as if she had not spoken. I destroyed 12 of your fighters and considered the matter settled. I allowed the rest of you to live because I was trying to be better. For her. He glanced at Dahlia, his expression softening for just a moment. But you have made a critical error in judgment, Vivian. You assumed my mercy was weakness. You assumed my love made me vulnerable. He looked back at the vampire in his grip, and his smile was terrible to behold. Let me show you exactly how wrong you were. What happened next was brutal and swift. Theron moved with the precision of a creature who had been ending threats for 4 centuries. Vivian did not stand a chance. Within seconds, she was on the ground, broken and gasping. But Theron did not finish her. Instead, he crouched beside her, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire room. You are going to limp back to your coven, he said pleasantly. You are going to tell them exactly what happened here tonight. You are going to explain that Dahlia Reyes is under the protection of the Ashworth bloodline, and anyone who touches her, threatens her, or looks at her wrong will face me. Not my guards. Not my coven. Me personally. His smile widened. And then you are going to take your people and leave England. Tonight. Because if I see any member of the Valancourt coven in my city after sunrise, I will hunt down every single one of you and spend the next century making you regret this moment. He stood, pulling Vivian up with him, and threw her toward the broken door. Go. While I am still feeling merciful. Vivian fled, moving with the desperate speed of prey escaping a predator. The moment she was gone, Theron crossed to Dahlia, his hands gentle as they assessed her injuries. "Are you hurt badly?" he asked, his voice rough with concern. "I am fine," Dahlia said, though her ribs were screaming. "Sovereign saved me. He attacked her before she could." She broke off as Theron pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "When the wards went down, when I felt something wrong in the manor, when I realized you were in danger," his voice cracked. "I have never moved so fast in my entire existence. If she had killed you, Dahlia, if I had lost you." "You did not lose me," Dahlia said, wrapping her arms around him. "I am here. I am safe. We are safe." Theron pulled back just enough to cup her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she had not realized she was crying. "You hit her with a frying pan," he said, something like awe in his voice. "Despite everything," Dahlia laughed. "It was a skillet. And it was cast iron from a kitchen supply store in Chelsea. Very sturdy." "You are magnificent," Theron breathed. "You are terrifying and magnificent, and I love you so much it defies reason." "I love you too," Dahlia said. "Even when you go all murder vampire and destroy my kitchen door. I will buy you 12 kitchen doors. I will buy you an entire kitchen." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I will buy you anything you want if you promise never to scare me like that again." Sovereign barked, reminding them of his presence. Theron looked down at the dog, who was sitting proudly, tail wagging, clearly pleased with himself. "And you," Theron said, crouching down to scratch Sovereign's ears. "You protected her. You put yourself between her and danger without hesitation." His voice grew thick with emotion. "You are the best of us, old friend. The very best." Sovereign licked his face, then went to Dahlia and leaned against her legs. She looked down at the dog, then at Theron, then at the destroyed kitchen around them. "So," she said slowly. "That was eventful." Theron laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. "Eventful. Yes. That is certainly one word for it. Here is something I am curious about. Dahlia just proved she will fight for herself and for this relationship, even against a vampire. Do you think Theron finally, fully trusts her now? Or will there always be a small part of him that is afraid? Tell me what you think in the comments." 3 months after the attack, Theron called a gathering of the London vampire covens. Dahlia stood beside him in the grand hall of Ashworth Manor, wearing a dress Seraphina had insisted she needed, deep emerald green that brought out the warmth in her skin. Sovereign sat at her feet, a silent guardian. 50 vampires filled the room, representatives from every major coven in England and several from the continent. They watched Dahlia with curiosity, suspicion, and in some cases, barely concealed hostility. Theron rose from his seat, and the room fell silent. "I have called you here tonight to make an announcement," he said, his voice carrying the authority of centuries. "As you know, the Valancourt coven has left England following their attack on Ashworth Manor. This is not the announcement." He turned to Dahlia and held out his hand. She took it, her heart pounding, and rose to stand beside him. "This is Dahlia Reyes," Theron continued. "She is human. She is a chef. She came to my home as a servant and became something far more important." His hand tightened around hers. "She is my partner. My companion. The woman I intend to spend the rest of my existence protecting and cherishing. And as of tonight, she is under the official protection of the Ashworth bloodline." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "What this means," Theron said, his voice hardening, "is that any threat to her is a threat to me. Any harm done to her will be answered as if harm had been done to my own blood. And anyone who thinks a human is an acceptable target because she is not immortal." His smile was dangerous. "Well, you are welcome to test that theory. Once." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Then, from the back of the room, an old vampire with silver hair and kind eyes stood. "The Edinburgh Coven recognizes Dahlia Reyes as under Ashworth protection," he said formally. "And we welcome her to our world." One by one, the other covens followed. Some grudgingly, some warmly, but all of them acknowledging Dahlia's new status. When the last coven had spoken, Theron looked at Dahlia, and she saw the question in his eyes. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "Thank you," she said to the assembled vampires. "I know this is unusual. I know I am just a human in a world I am still learning to understand. But I promise you this. I will honor the trust Theron has placed in me. I will respect your world and your laws. And anyone who comes to Ashworth Manor will always find a warm meal and a seat at my table." It was a simple statement. But somehow, it was the right one. The tension in the room eased. Several vampires actually smiled. After the gathering ended, after the last guest had departed, Theron found Dahlia in the kitchen. She was making hot chocolate, of all things, still in her fancy dress with an apron tied over it. "That went well," she said, not turning around. "I think only 3 of them actively wanted to kill me. That is an improvement." Theron crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "You were perfect," he murmured. "You are always perfect. I am definitely not perfect. I panic cook when I am nervous, I second-guess everything, and I once cried during a commercial for dog food." "Perfect," Theron repeated firmly. Dahlia turned in his arms to face him. "I love you. Even when you go all dramatic vampire king and make grand declarations in front of 50 supernatural creatures. I love you too. Even when you hit my enemies with kitchen equipment and offer them dinner in the same breath." They stood there in the kitchen, swaying slightly, Sovereign watching from his bed in the corner. "Theron?" Dahlia said quietly. "Yes. I want forever with you." He went very still. "Dahlia." "I know what that means," she interrupted. "I know what you would have to do. I know I would have to die and come back as something else. I know you swore you would never turn another human." She looked up at him, her eyes clear and certain. "But I am not asking you to turn me today or tomorrow or even this year. I am just asking you to think about it. To consider that maybe, eventually, we could have actual forever. Not just my short human lifespan." Theron cupped her face, his expression torn between hope and fear. "I have been thinking about nothing else for weeks," he admitted. "The thought of watching you age, watching you die while I remain unchanged, it is unbearable. But the thought of taking your humanity, your warmth, your life and replacing it with this cold immortality, that is equally unbearable." "What if I want it?" Dahlia asked. "What if I choose it, fully informed, fully willing? What if I tell you that forever with you, even as a vampire, sounds better than a normal human life without you?" "Then I would say you are probably insane," Theron said, but his voice was shaking. "And I would say yes. Someday. When you are absolutely certain. When you have lived enough human life to know what you are giving up." He kissed her softly. "Ask me again in a year. If you still want forever, I will give it to you." 1 year, Dahlia agreed. 1 year, Theron confirmed. 18 months later, Dahlia gave birth to twins. It was a complication neither of them had expected. Apparently, vampire-human biology was more complex than anyone had documented. The pregnancy had been difficult, dangerous, and Theron had been absolutely insufferable with his overprotectiveness. But when Dahlia held her son and daughter for the first time, looked down at their tiny faces and saw Theron's eyes staring back at her from 2 perfect little humans, every difficult moment was worth it. The boy they named Edmund, after Theron's brother. The girl they named Rosa, after Dahlia's grandmother. Theron sat beside her hospital bed in the private room he had rented out, staring at his children with an expression of absolute wonder. "They are so small," he whispered, afraid to hold them, afraid he would break them. "They are perfect," Dahlia corrected. She carefully transferred Rosa into his arms, watching as he cradled her with infinite gentleness. "Look at her, Theron. She has your hair." It was true. Both babies had been born with wisps of white blonde hair that glowed in the hospital lights. "They are half vampire," one of the specialist doctors had explained earlier. "They will age normally until puberty, then the vampire genes will activate. They will have some abilities, some vulnerabilities. We will monitor them closely. Now, watching Theron hold their daughter while their son slept peacefully in her own arms, Dahlia felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. I never thought I could have this, Theron said quietly. Family. Real family. Children. He looked up at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. You gave me everything, Dahlia. Everything I thought I had lost forever. We gave each other everything, Dahlia corrected. You gave me a home. A purpose. A love that is ridiculous and overwhelming and exactly what I needed. Sovereign, who had been allowed into the room because Theron had simply refused to leave him behind, padded over to the bed. He sniffed carefully at both babies, then wagged his tail and rested his head on Dahlia's leg. He approves, Theron said with a smile. Of course he does. He has excellent taste. Dahlia reached down to scratch behind Sovereign's ears. You are going to be the best big brother, are you not? You are going to protect these babies just like you protected me. Sovereign's tail wagged harder. 5 years later, Dahlia stood in the kitchen of her restaurant in Shoreditch. Reyes and Ashworth had opened 3 years ago to critical acclaim. It was small, intimate, serving a fusion of Puerto Rican and Old English cuisine that had food critics calling it revolutionary. Dahlia cooked her grandmother's recipes alongside Theron's mother's recipes, creating something entirely new from their combined histories. Tonight was their anniversary. 5 years since she had walked into Ashworth Manor with nothing but a suitcase and a prayer. The restaurant was closed for a private celebration. Family only. Serafina was there, looking stunning as always, entertaining Edmund and Rosa with magic tricks that were definitely real magic, but the children were too young to understand that yet. Mr. Hartwell had brought a gift, beautifully wrapped. Several members of Theron's coven had stopped by to pay their respects. And Theron himself stood at the bar, his white hair loose around his shoulders, watching Dahlia cook with an expression of such deep contentment it made her heart ache. Sovereign lay beneath the table, older now but still loyal, still protective, still the best dog in all of London. Dahlia plated the final dish and carried it to the table herself. Arroz con gandules, made exactly the way her grandmother had taught her, with one secret ingredient from Theron's mother's journal. This is it, she announced. The dish that started everything. Theron took a bite, his eyes closing with pleasure. Perfect. As always. You say that about everything I make. Because it is true about everything you make. He caught her hand and pulled her down into the chair beside him. Happy anniversary, my love. Happy anniversary, Dahlia echoed. She looked around the table. At Serafina laughing with the children. At Sovereign sleeping peacefully. At Theron watching her with eyes that held centuries of life and all the love in the world. I have been thinking, she said quietly. About that conversation we had. About forever. Theron went very still. And I am ready. If you are. She met his eyes. Turn me, Theron. Give me forever with you. I have lived my human life. I have had my children. I have built my dream. Now I want to spend eternity making new dreams with you. Theron was silent for a long moment. Then he raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. Are you absolutely certain? I have never been more certain of anything. It will hurt. The transformation. You will die and wake up as something else. I know. You will have to drink blood. You will have to live in shadows. You will have to watch Edmund and Rosa age while you stay frozen. I know all of that, Dahlia said patiently. And I still choose it. I choose you. I choose us. I choose forever. Theron closed his eyes, something like relief washing over his features. Then I will give you forever, he whispered. On one condition. What condition? He opened his eyes, and they were blazing with emotion. Marry me first. Be my wife in the human way before you become my wife in the vampire way. Let me stand before our family and our friends and vow to love you for eternity. And then, when you are ready, I will turn you. And we will have all the time in the world. Dahlia felt tears streaming down her face. Yes. Yes, absolutely yes. Theron kissed her there in the restaurant, surrounded by their family, with Sovereign wagging his tail beneath the table and their children cheering because kissing was funny when you were 5 years old. When they finally broke apart, Serafina was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. I am not crying, she announced to the room. This is just what my face does when I am happy. You are definitely crying, Dahlia said with a laugh. Fine. I am crying. You have turned my terrifying brother into a sentimental fool and given me a real family again. I am allowed to cry. The celebration continued late into the night. They ate and drank and told stories. Theron recounted the night he had come through a wall to save Dahlia, much to the children's delight. Dahlia told the story of hitting Vivian with a skillet, to general applause. And later, after everyone had gone home, after the children were asleep upstairs in the apartment above the restaurant, after Sovereign had been walked and fed and settled in his bed, Theron and Dahlia stood alone in the kitchen where so much of their love had been built. Thank you, Theron said quietly. For what? For walking into my home 5 years ago. For refusing to run when you discovered what I was. For hitting my enemies with kitchen equipment. For giving me hope when I thought I was beyond it. He pulled her close. For choosing me. Every day. Even when I made it difficult. Especially when you made it difficult, Dahlia corrected with a smile. You are worth the difficulty, Theron Ashworth. You are worth everything. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Outside, London carried on, unaware that a vampire king and his human queen were building a love that would last centuries. Inside Ashworth Manor, in a bed warmed by their presence, Sovereign dreamed of the day a woman with kind hands had arrived at the door and changed everything. And in a small restaurant in Shoreditch, the scent of Eros Con candles and Old English recipes mingled together, creating something entirely new. Something that tasted like love. Something that tasted like forever. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, if you felt every emotion, every heartbreak, every moment of hope, and you have not subscribed yet, I need you to ask yourself why. This community is growing faster than any other vampire love story channel out there, and you are missing out. Hit that subscribe button right now and be part of something special. Tell me in the comments where you watched this from. I want to know which part of the world just fell in love with Theron and Dahlia's story. And listen, if you love this story, if it grabbed your heart and did not let go, the next one is even better. The next story is more emotionally twisted, more intense, more satisfying than anything you have seen before. That thumbnail on your screen right now? Click it. Watch the next chapter. Trust me, you do not want to miss what is coming next. This is just the beginning of the vampire love stories that will consume you. Click that video. Join us. Let us fall into the darkness together.